Okay, everybody, welcome back. I have a wonderful, wonderful record I'm showing today. It is a record that isn't even just a record like you get from a thrift store or from a store in general. This is a soundtrack, but it's not just to any movie, it's to one of my favorite movies, a movie that really captures what it means to be a young man who is pretty much seduced by an older woman and he doesn't know what to do with his life. And that sounds like, my life. Anyway, so Simon and Garfunkel, from the duo behind things of like songs like The Sound of Silence or Scarborough Fair, they actually were told that they should pretty much make a nice record for this, movie, this wonderful movie. And this was about the time that they were finishing up the shooting and whatnot, and so Mike Nichols, the guy who directed the film, actually was like, Simon, Garfunkel, you should really write a wonderful song for this. So Simon, shows two of his songs. One's called Punky's Dilemma, and the other one is Olvers. And Mike Nichols, he wasn't too impressed with them, even though they are good songs, but he wanted something else. And then Art came in and said, "Hey, you know what, Simon? You have that one song you're working on. What is it, Mrs. Roosevelt?" And it's like, do, Mrs. Roosevelt. And then, Mike Nichols like, you know what, that it should be Mrs. Robinson because that's what we're making the movie about. And so, you have do, and here's to you, Mrs. Robinson. Jesus loves you more than you will know. So, after the film was released in 1967, actually a month after it was released, they actually pressed this record. And this record was released in 1968. And, you have two sides, of course, but the first side is really the part that is heard in the song the most. So let's take a listen.
People talking without speaking.
This is Mrs. Robinson. And this was before they even used drums or anything for the song. And so it just tapers off. And that's pretty much what they recorded in 1967 for the movie, and then later they put into the actual soundtrack. Now this is the music that you hear in the film when Mrs. Robinson is asking Ben all those questions and offers him a drink. Turns on this music, actually. Asks for her opinion of him. And of course, he figures it out. Are you trying to seduce me, Mrs. Robinson? And if you hear this and you see the movie, you can see that the dialogue, is what the music is actually following. Just think of it for a minute. Well, are you seducing me, Mrs. Robinson? Anyway, so it's just a wonderful record. It truly is, and they also have some other Simon and Garfunkel songs, and they also have some of these other songs by this David Grisham guy, who was actually the band leader, not of Simon and Garfunkel, but of the actual band that performed all that instrumental music. And I found out that this actually was a 1968 pressing of the original record, or of the soundtrack, because I looked online for details so I can figure out when it was made, because it didn't have a date on it, and I was really curious. But yeah, it's really an interesting, and no date there, but it's an interesting album. It's not just an interesting album, it is one of those albums you have to really have, in your collection. I believe that full-fledgedly that you have to have the soundtrack to The Graduate in your record collection. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But it's just a great record. It had a bunch of great songs. And to follow it up, I'm going to take a look into one of my favorite bookends, which, follows off of the success of this, and was actually mostly recorded before, Simon and Garfunkel were commissioned to record any music for The Graduate. But anyway, I've kept you listening to me talk long enough, so make sure you like, subscribe, give a comment. If you love The Graduate, tell me about it. Tell me your favorite scene. Mine, it's when, Benjamin is seduced, but, that's only iconic, But, yeah, and before you go, just one word: plastics. If you watch the movie, you would get it. Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful day.